everyone. It's Steph Lee, the founder of Host Agency Reviews. Today we have a webinar the whole team is super excited about. It's part one of a three-part series. So it's called Listen, Learn, and Act. And the first webinar we're doing is listening, and it's listening to some of our colleagues within the travel industry and what it's like to work as a Black travel advisor in a predominantly white industry. The idea behind putting this series together was to foster a conversation about what's going on in the world right now, and for advisors that are open to it and want to be part of the change, to try to have a better understanding of things and have more compassion and empathy, and then to also the other parts of the webinar, Learn and Act, will be more action items and how to be more aware of Black travelers. So I'll do introductions of our panel in just a second, but there's a couple things I want to go over first. We are live streaming on multiple platforms. So hello, Facebook people. Hello to Twitch, which I know no one is watching, but you never know. Hello to YouTube listeners. And then we'll also be posting this afterwards on Instagram and LinkedIn. If you're not already following or subscribed or whatever the button says to the Host Agency Reviews channel that you're watching this on, please make sure to do that. We have a lot of great live streaming events we're doing, and this will help make sure you don't miss any of them. All right, just quick word on YouTube. If you're having trouble with comments and you're new to this, in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a little like circle icon for your profile. You click on that and then click on your channel, and then create channel. That will allow you to comment on the video as we're going through. And we're going to do 45 minutes of kind of talking with our panelists, and then we'll do a 15-minute or so question and answer section. Anytime you have questions, feel free to shoot those in the comments, and we've got the whole HAR team working with us, and they'll be able to pass your questions on. And lastly, I want to make sure that hopefully you can attend all three of the webinars. We don't have all the dates set yet, but if you're not familiar with our event calendar, if you go to the homepage and go to the drop down for travel event, that'll pop you here and you'll be able to see everything. Right now, our Listen, Learn, Act, we're still solidifying dates for part 2 and part 3, the Learn and the Act. So go ahead, if you'd like to make sure that you're alerted to that, you can go up and sign up for our newsletter at hostagencyreviews.com/newsletter. And in our newsletter, we'll make sure to have information on the upcoming webinars. All right, our behind the scenes team here. We have April and Mary, and Bridget's also there. We had a lot of last minute changes to the webinar, so I took Bridget off, but she actually is there. So I'm sorry, Bridget. So you're knowing a little bit about the HAR team, but we want to know a little bit about you. So if you're streaming with us right now, let us know where you're tuning in from. And I think we all know that really means what room in the house you're in. So give us really exciting things. Let us know if you're in the pantry or the basement or in the closet, wherever you want to be. That's very exciting. I'm in the attic. And then also let us know how long you've been in travel. We'd love to hear about that. All right, so let's go ahead and we'll introduce our panelists and our moderators. So first of all, we have Regina Hill. We're really pleased to have her as the moderator today. She's the founder and CEO of Regina Hill Consulting, and she's also the executive director of inclusion and diversity at St. Mary's College in Notre Dame. So welcome, Regina. Hello.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, we're so excited to have you. So well, here in spirit with us is Willie Fruget, the owner of Wills Up Travel, and I know he's watching. So hello, Willie. Willie, unfortunately, was being a real DIYer this weekend and building a patio, and then pulled his back with the pavers. He did finish the project, in case anyone's wondering, but now he's laid up and can't move. So, Willie, we hope you feel better soon, and you're here with us in spirit. We also have Tammy O'Hara, who's the owner of Million Miles Travel Agency over in Brooklyn. And that's a travel agency that specializes in special occasion group travel. And then she's also got a tour operator business called Island Food Getaways that specializes in small group culinary tours to the Caribbean, Mexico, South America, and Central America, which sounds delicious. Welcome, Tammy.
Thank you so much for having me. Welcome,
Oh,
everyone.
yeah, we're so excited to have you on. Next up, we have Dewan Shorter. Oh, by the way, Tammy's been in business for 5 years. Is that right, Tammy?
That's correct, yes.
And then we have Dewan Shorter, who, Dewan, I feel like we met like over 10 years ago or something. Has it been that long?
Yeah, it's been a little over 10 years. Yeah.
So Dewan is the owner of the Timely Traveler travel agency, which specializes in custom luxury travel all across the globe. So welcome, Dewan. So excited to have you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. Hello, everybody.
Yeah, he's also a fellow atticer. He's
That's
also
right.
in his attic, which is very exciting. And then here in spirit as well is Rosie Fulera Big, who wasn't able, she's over in the Netherlands and wasn't able to make it last minute. So Rosie's here with us in spirit, but let's, hold on, I've got to, all right, let's go ahead and kind of pass it over because again, we're going to do about 40 minutes of conversations and talking about what it's like to be an African American or Black travel agent in a predominantly white industry, and then we'll break into Q&As at the end. So, Rosie, are you on here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, yay! Rosie is here. Okay, let me give you your full bio then. Okay, so Rosie and I met in Alaska. I don't know, maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, but she's the owner of Sweet Integrity Travel. She's an active and adventure travel specialist with Travel Leaders, one of the few. And she empowers travelers to step beyond their comfort zone. So Rosie, I'm so glad you could join us. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad I could join you.
Fabulous.
Thanks for inviting.
Yeah, you win the award for logging in from the furthest away. So congratulations. All right, Regina, I'm going to toss it over to you. Kick it off.
Thank you so much, Steph. And thank you for allowing me to navigate or to moderate this important conversation and discussion. And thank you for amplifying Black voices during this time in our country. We're going to jump right on in because we want to be able to save time for you all to ask questions, but we definitely want to hear what our experienced panelists have to say. So we'll jump to the first question, and this is for Dewan. Did you encounter barriers and or surprises in starting and maintaining your business that you didn't see your white, non-Black peers experiencing?
Yeah, good question. I think, starting off, getting the business up and running, I'd say no. I met a host agency, Travel Quest, who actually did a really good job of helping me navigate kind of some of the waters early on. I think, where some barriers might come into play with me or more on the flip side with maybe with having initial conversations with new clients and those kind of discussions, having to prove ourselves a little bit more, maybe providing more referrals, maybe having more conversations than maybe some of my counterparts did, just based on some of my, based on conversations I've had with colleagues, just learned how some of their process went versus how mine went in some of those cases. But I think as far as getting into the industry and the barriers, I would say, not so much, to be honest. There, I'd say it's more like maybe the client-facing side, where I had to maybe go the extra mile or do something a little extra to kind of bring that client in. So, yeah, I'll turn it over to Tammy or someone else on that one.
Thanks, Dewan, for sharing. Tammy, this question is for you. And let's talk a little bit about the lack of representation, especially among leadership and C-suite positions in the industry. How do you feel the ripples out? How do you feel this ripples out to your daily experience as a Black travel professional?
Well, I think one of the most important things that happen when you don't have a lack of representation at the top is that when it comes to making decisions on the ground, there is that failure to think about diversity. One of the things that I have always I wouldn't say campaigned against, but was just always disappointed in is that there was never much in terms of marketing to diversity beyond, Pride Month or maybe Black History Month, but just on a 24/7, 365 day diversity. More people of African descent in marketing materials. The only time sometimes where I see somebody who's of color is occasionally when there is the help, unfortunately, and that doesn't really ring well for me as a travel agent or as a traveler.
That's very good. Thanks for sharing that. And representation definitely matters. And you talked about diversifying the marketing. We have this question here, so I'm just going to toss it out now. So what advice would you give to suppliers to diversify their staff, board, and marketing? This is for Dewan. Let's toss it to you first, and then we'll see if Rosie has something to add.
Yeah, I think, for the marketing piece, I think it's, it's, I won't say simple, but I do think it's more, there's a lot of collateral that we receive from from our supply partners, right? And, I think in that discussion we've had around with other folks, it's, the representation of all travelers, right? I think, there's a lack of color in some of the material we see out there, some of the flyers that we get in pamphlets from them. So I think just more material for us to share that obviously does show all the travelers who are truly traveling out there, so we can make sure that we take those materials and serve those to our right audiences from a travel agency perspective. And then I think too, leadership, and I think Tammy kind of hit on some of that too. Leadership, being more folks in color, and being able to have access to more folks in color at the top end of the travel industry would make advisors like us feel a little bit easier and maybe a little more comfortable at times. So those are just two ways I think that suppliers and our travel partners can kind of help us as agents.
Thanks, Dewan. How about you, Rosie? What advice would you give?
Rosie? I think we might have lost her for some reason.
Yeah, we might have lost her over in the Netherlands. If she jumps back on, let me know. And
I can jump in for Rosie. In terms of, and this was something when Dewan was speaking, I kind of thought about even with conferences, when travel conferences, the speakers, the types of advice that is given to agents, just in general. I think once you start getting a little bit more diverse at the top, then you'll start to see more diversity within the travel conferences, because influencers, sometimes influencers are invited to these conferences. Who we network with, if we have a large portion of the largest portion of new travelers are Black travelers, and there's really no advice to how to market to them versus others because they're different needs. And when you have influencers and you have influencers of color, they know, what their audience is, what it's getting their audience to kind of agree with them and wanting to travel. So I think once we start getting a little bit more diverse at the top, then we'll start seeing, more diversity on how we market to travelers.
So Tammy, on last week when we all had a call together, you mentioned that you develop your own marketing material with more people of color so that you can market. Why was that important for you to do that?
It's to kind of stay true to myself, because I know, I come from a background where my family we couldn't afford to travel when I was younger. And I didn't really start traveling until I was I was in college and beyond. And I know the type of experiences that you may not have gotten if you don't have, that background of traveling. But you're not going, I think it's always important to see yourself in the marketing material. It makes it so much easier to, as a travel agent or a travel advisor, to sell something if the person can already see themselves there. And there are some companies that do a better job, I think, of it. And, it's so much easier to say, look, here, look at this marketing. Look at this photo. Can you see yourself there? And, I make it a point when I travel or when I do experiences to show myself, sometimes I am my model, showing myself doing these things so that I can show them to my clients. And, I'll post them on Instagram or post them on Facebook and say, this could be you too.
Mm-hmm.
It could be done.
Thank you for that. Thanks for sharing that. So for those of you who feel that you need to spruce up your marketing material, talk to Tammy because she is a pro at it right now. So let's talk a little bit about code switching. And for those of you on the call who may not know what code switching is, I'm going to give you the brief definition of it. Code switching is the process of shifting from one linguistic code to another, depending on the social context or conversational setting. That is the brief definition of what code switching is. And so, Tammy, we're going to toss it back to you. If you have ever experienced this, what does it look like within your industry?
I think you're more relaxed. For just the most simplest terms, you feel more relaxed when you're speaking with someone that can relate to you more on a linguistic level. When I talk to other Black travel advisors, I think that it's not as formal. I don't have to worry as much about what I say or what I do, versus sometimes when I speak with, especially if it's I'm meeting someone for the first time. I'm an introvert a little, mostly an introvert, so I'm always kind of thinking about what people think about me. So having something else in common helps. So it's I'm a little bit more relaxed. I'm more able to kind of show my personality versus being a little bit more formal, trying to make sure that I don't say something that kind of reflects badly on me, or that I think that might reflect badly on me. So that's kind of, when you're relaxed, you're able to really develop the connections that you really do need in this industry.
Mm. Yeah, so for me, I code switch all the time. I work in higher ed. I have a PhD, and so around scholars and others, I can't use my broken English. I grew up speaking broken English, and so I try not to let some of those slang words slip out or some of my broken English slip out in those settings. And so I understand what you mean. Like, you feel more comfortable when you're able to speak in your true dialect, and it's a little bit more relaxed. And when you're with others that can speak that too and know your language, they just kind of get it,
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for sharing your experience, Tammy.
Yeah, Regina.
Yes.
If I could interject real quick, I think that actually ties back to your initial question you asked me about the barriers and kind of overcoming. I think this kind of does tie back to, I didn't fully flush it out when I said it the first time, but this is one of the things. You're having that initial conversation, and it's, as Tammy mentioned, talking proper. I shouldn't say speaking proper, but make sure you're buttoned up to the absolute, T with that initial conversation with a potential client, because you're not saying you're being scrutinized a little bit more, but you're being watched a little bit more closely, right? Versus if it was it's the same to mention, maybe a Black colleague or a potential, African American Black client, maybe you are a little bit more comfortable, and that conversation is a little bit smoother initially, right? So I think that is it's an interesting topic, and I do think it comes into play probably more than we even think about. How you have that conversation with different folks across different races and ethnicities. So yeah, I'm glad that in.
So on that same stream of thought, this next question is for all of you. How have you experienced the impact of color blindness in the industry? When someone says to you, when I see you, I don't see color, or back to what you were saying, when you're talking to clients on the phone and you want to make sure that you're speaking in a professional tone, that they don't hear your Blackness over the phone call. So have you experienced any color blindness within the industry?
I guess I'll take it. Yes, I think that refusing to see color sometimes it's limiting, because we have, and it's just more about my experience, my experience as a Black woman, my culture, and not being able to see that kind of doesn't really give you the full breadth of what it means to travel and really experience things. And one of the things that we mentioned, that we spoke about prior to this live, was some of the cultural experiences that are marketed towards travelers to different countries. And, a lot of times I know that for myself, and I wouldn't say I do like hard adventure travel, but I do like to go and explore different places and see and meet different people and their cultures. But one of the things that is always kind of a selling point is going into people's homes. And I know for a lot of Black people, you just don't do that. And it's really uncomfortable. And you kind of feel like the other while you're in that. You're supposed to be, learning something, and it's really uncomfortable. So, being able to be culturally sensitive is something that you can't have if you're colorblind, because you're saying that everyone has the same culture and experience things the same way, and that's just not true.
Dewan, did you want to add?
You know what? I think Tammy did a good job on that. I agree 100% with you. I mean, just to your point, colorblind. I mean, you see color, and as Tammy mentioned, as you see color, the different cultural representations and differences come into play. So I think, if you don't see color, then we talk about marketing. I mean, how do you market to a group or a specific person if you can't see the color, right, and their differences? So I've come across it, but I agree. I don't agree, and I think color does exist, and it exists for a reason. Right? For everybody's different, and to be able to target and reach those consumers that they need to be reached. So that's all. I think Tammy did a good job on that one. So,
and this is why it's so important to have people of color at the table as executives in C-suite positions, so that those cultures cannot be ignored. When I'm sitting at the table, I'm bringing myself and my culture to the table, and we cannot ignore the issues that are within the Black community because I choose to voice them. And that's why it's so important to have people of color at the table making these decisions so that we can market to a very diverse network. And I think Rosie is back. Am I correct? Is Rosie back?
I thought I saw her.
Yes, I'm back. I'm back. Yeah. Sorry.
Welcome back, Rosie. No problem. No problem.
Thank you.
Well, Rosie, since you're back, and not to say that we heard enough from Tammy or Dewan, but I want to amplify your voice. And so I'm going to toss this question to you. Okay, Rosie? Would you be willing to share an experience of racism or microaggression you've encountered as a travel professional?
As a travel professional? Not as a traveler, just as a travel professional, specifically in the industry. Okay. All right. We can do this. Yes, I'm willing to share. But can we circle back to this in like 2 minutes?
Yes. Yes.
I don't want to call names I don't need to be calling out. Does that make sense?
Yep, makes perfect sense. How about Tammy or Dewan? Do you want to take a stab at that question?
You know what? I think that it's kind of more just in general, just as a business owner, and especially as a Black business owner, being taken seriously as such, not as a hobbyist. And I think that's kind of, there's multiple facets going on sometimes where it's, you are a minority business owner, and we're also in the travel agency, travel business, which people don't even believe exists anymore. Sometimes it's people are telling you to do to be successful, and it's kind of like, oh, if you can't do these things, then you're really not in the right business. I'm like, well, I don't have those types of networks that you're speaking of. So can you kind of think of other ways that I can be successful? I'm an attorney by trade, so I also work part-time as a lawyer. So I do have a legal network that I can kind of uh, market to. But if you are a travel agent, just out of high school or college, why are we asking you to go to country clubs? There are still, a very exclusive and exclusionary atmosphere in those types of organizations. So telling people that if you want to be a successful luxury travel agent, that you need to go there, it's a setup for a fail.
Mm. Thank you for sharing, Tammy. How about you, Juan?
Yeah, I mean, I'll keep it at a high level too. I think, I mean, just in what I was thinking right before Tammy even mentioned it, but I think, it works for, just to summarize what she said, what I was thinking, but what work for someone else in the industry may not make sense for a Black travel advisor. Your approach is a little bit different. And I think, as Tammy mentioned, the country club or however that travel agency's approach may look a lot different than Tammy's or mine, or maybe not, but it may, right? So I think it's understanding kind of your own business and kind of what works for you. And I think, and kind of taking your own approach, I think at times, right? Versus maybe what others tell you will or won't work in the industry, based on their experiences. So, yeah, not a lot else to add, to be honest. I haven't had a ton of impact at that level for me. So, yeah.
Thanks for sharing.
Can I interject?
Yes, Rosie.
Okay, because I do have a specific example, high level, low level, regardless, because microaggressions tend to be low level, right? So if you want a specific example, here we go. There's a vendor, I was trying to put together a group for Australia, and I can speak about it because this vendor is no longer in business, and I don't even need to call the name. But there's a vendor that a lot of people a lot of my peers work with, very professional, super open, very like bend over backwards, blah, 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 blah. For me, that was at all. It was pulling teeth to get answers. And I actually had this happen with 2 vendors in Australia. Pulling teeth to and I made face-to-face contact with them first. So I don't know if maybe that had something to do with it. But yeah, from my experience with them was an anomaly even to my peers. They didn't really understand why there was so much friction and why I wasn't getting answers and why there was no follow-up and that kind of thing. So it's one of those things that maybe it just was an off time for those 2 vendors, but I did get the impression that it wasn't bad.
Thanks for sharing, Rosie. So this next question kind of ties into the example you just gave. So this question says, can you give an example of a time when you wished a white or non-Black peer spoke up for you as you experienced racism and or microaggression in the travel industry? And Rosie, you said that a lot of your peers had used that company. So do you wish that they would have spoken up for you on your behalf to advocate for you? Rosie?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Sure. You mentioned that your peers had used that same company. And so the next question speaks to about giving an example of a time when you wished a white or non-Black peer spoke up for you when you experienced racism or microaggression in the travel industry. So I was just switching the question to say, did you wish that your peers had spoken up for you or advocated for you when you experienced that with the company?
Sorry, I misunderstood the initial question, but yeah, in that moment I did because I had 2 peers that had a very good relationship, and I did want answers as to why, or what was happening, or something deeper. But yeah, it's a very uncomfortable. I get that it's uncomfortable. I didn't push, and it kind of just is what it is.
What about you, Tammy or Dewan? Have you experienced racism or microaggression where you wish your peers had spoken up for you within the travel industry?
Offhand, I can't think of anything. And probably one of the problems with those sometimes microaggressions is that it's insidious in that there's so many different ways that you can interpret a situation. And I know for me, I'm more of an optimist, and I hate kind of putting negative things on people without solid proof. So there are probably, there are probably a lot of times that it actually did happen, but that I kind of brushed it off. And that's kind of the problem with a lot of the prejudice and microaggressions that people face on a daily basis, is that unless it's something, 100% blatant, it is so easy sometimes for everyone, including the person that it's being perpetrated against, to just kind of brush it off and say, I'm pretty sure that this happened because of who I am and how I look, but I can't either prove it 100%, or I just feel like I won't be backed up because it's so hard to prove.
Mm-hmm. Tawan, did you want to add?
Yeah, I think, just what you mentioned, Tam, I think it's hard to prove. I mean, I think, even going back to your initial barrier question, the couple of questions we've talked about, in the back of your mind, you're like, okay, maybe this is happening because I'm a Black travel advisor or this and that. But to Tammy's point, you can't, how do you prove that, right? So for me, it's, if I'm not working with this vendor I'm working with, I have that feeling or sense, and I'll take my business somewhere else, right? Because I don't want my client going on that trip with that vendor if that's what I feel, that they may have that similar experience or some different experience that's not what they wanted. And then for me, taking my business to that supplier, I'll find another option, right? That makes me feel more comfortable and easier to work with. So, yeah, directly, like I said, there's no blatant way to know. I haven't had any of those experiences 100%. But there's been times where I've taken business other places just with the hunch that, you know what, this isn't working. So I'm going to find another partner to work with, or another place to send my client, right, to make them feel it. So yeah.
So what you all just explained is some of the side effects of microaggressions. There is research shows there's an internal process, psychological process that you go through when you internalize these microaggressions, and you question, is it even worth it? Calling it out for Black women is, if I say something, they're going to take me as the angry Black woman. And you're questioning, like, did I hear what they said? Did they say that correctly? Or was that a mistake? So there's a psychological internal process that you go through when you experience microaggressions. And that's why it leads to what Tammy says of just brushing it off, because sometimes you feel like it's just not worth it to even address it. Let's go to our next question. And this question is for Dewan. How do you think you may experience FAMs or conferences different than your white non-African American peers?
Yeah, good question. I think kind of going back to what we mentioned a few times. I think when you when you show up on a fam trip with other travel advisors and agents, I think as a Black travel advisor, I mean, one of the initial things you notice too is you're maybe the only potentially Black person or person of color on the fam trip, right? Depending on the size, if not the only one of the few, right? So I think that's one thing, and I think also. I think we talked about a little bit before, that lack of representation from, Black or, folks of color, that due to, maybe not the outreach, not reaching us in the proper channels, or we not being marketed to attend these fam trips, what's that criteria, what's that look like, why is there not more representation? So yeah, so that's initially what you notice. I think also the diversity and type of fam trips offered. We talked about culturally sensitive experiences that that we want to experience. I think you look at some of the fam trips, some of them are pretty standard of what's offered as far as that experience. That may not, if I'm a travel advisor and I attend that fam trip, will actually be taking this experience and push over my clients. So that's things to think about too for our suppliers. They're developing these fam trips. It's not a one shoe fits all. How do I make sure I'm providing different experiences that maybe a Black travel advisor is going to be able to market differently than a non-Black travel advisor, right? So I'll kind of leave it at that. I kind of started going a little bit further, but I think there's something that I noticed right away when you talk about fam trips, right?
Yeah.
So
thanks for sharing. This question is for Tammy and Rosie. What challenges do you experience in creating authentic, culturally enriching travel experiences for your Black clients?
Rosie, do you want to go first, or should I?
You matter. You go first.
Okay. All right, so one of the things that I really always preach in terms of when I put together itineraries is, what is it that my client is looking for? Are they looking for a very kind of generic experience, or are they looking for a very in-depth? And so I take that's my first step when I'm working with clients. And then second, I really always try to find something that is of interest to them. And I know that I ask them about, are there things that are sensitive that you don't want to maybe experience or not experience as much as? Because there are a lot of, pretty much any destination, I would say, within the Americas, North, Central, and South America, that you can have, the slavery discussion, because of most of those, I say 100% of those countries have had some form of slave trade in there. So if my client is looking for more history, I asked them, I was like, are you comfortable with that? And because you're going to be getting that history through the lens of that country, and that might not be a great thing. So I always try to counsel them on, what's the expectations of, going to another country and hearing about the slave trade or any other minority atrocities in that country, because it is a part of history. So I always try to, be sensitive to my clients and what it is that they're looking for, and kind of tailor it to them.
Rosie, did you want to add?
Yeah, the expectation history comment, that's a really, really good point. I haven't had it come up personally, but I anticipate that, as the business grows, that's going to become a big thing. But some of the things the challenges that I try to address proactively are, the safety of the area from the client, how open or inclusive the area is, how used to seeing Black faces that area maybe, or how my clients in particular open they are to that area's culture also, because it should be an exchange, an even exchange of positivity. I think that's what I try for. Interesting also, to Tammy's point, be interesting. And there are just some things that are, we'll just interesting. And a cool down. There has to be some. I advise strongly that regardless of what kind of cultural, active, any kind of experience that takes someone out of their comfort zone instead of putting them into a comfort zone that potentially exposes them to an other, that at the end there's some cool down period in between that and going home, because sometimes there's a lot more to unpack than we sometimes think. So it's one of the things that kind of stress for my clients color, where unpacking things at home has seemed to be less of a problem for my white clients. It's a different experience. So, I think it just goes back to being culturally sensitive, I think.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing, Rosie and Tammy. This next question is for you all, especially when you talked about, Rosie, the safety of your clients. So this question is, without a one-stop resource like Green Book, how can advisors find out which destinations are safe and friendly towards Black travelers? This is for all of you.
So I think what I as an advisor, just talking in general as a travel advisor, one of your jobs really is to discover, even if you've never set foot there, you need to be aware of things that are going on in certain countries. So you need to, be aware of, is there any political turmoil, societal turmoil going on? Is it targeted towards a certain type of racial or religious group? And you have to advise your clients of that. If there is an immigrant anti-immigration sentiment that's going on in a certain country, you need to make your client aware of that, especially if they look anywhere close to the immigrants that are coming into that country. So I gave one of the examples that I gave was when I went to Italy, and when at the time I was going to Italy, they were having a large influx of African immigrants into the country. Usually they were like laborers, day laborers, or especially for the African women, they were coming in as sex workers. And I did not know that before I went to Italy. And I would probably say, probably a different experience than someone who probably did know that and knew kind of what to expect from that. And I learned quickly enough because I was approached in I wasn't a negative way, but it was definitely a overtly sexual way. And I was not understanding why this was happening. And then I kind of went back and did the research, and I was like, oh, okay, that's what's happening. So that's important. You don't want to send your clients into a place that, they're having, anti-Black, anti-immigrant, any kind of, really high stress. You don't want them to be hurt, either physically or mentally, because sometimes it's the mental aspect that hurts the most.
Dewan, did you want to share?
Yeah, I think again, not one kind of book to go to or guide to go to for kind of monitoring various destinations. But I think if it's a destination that you're selling and you're marketing as a travel advisor, not just a Black travel advisor, but as a travel advisor in general, you need to know the destination, right? What's going on, what's current trends, what's happening. So I think, whether it's unrest against immigrants, whether it's unrest against non-immigrants, if there's protests going on, I mean, it could be a host of various things happening in our country, right? I think it's our job as travel agents, before even being a Black travel advisor, I should say, is to know what's going on in your destination you're selling, right? If you're selling that property, you need to know exactly what's happening when you're recommending to your client. So again, for me, I set various alerts, whether it's Google alerts, different travel industry trend alerts that come through my feed every day. And then it's just obviously staying up to date with what's going on with your destination you're selling. So again, no one stop kind of way to monitor it, but just doing your job as an advisor. So.
Rosie, would you like to add?
No, Sammy pretty much nailed it. Like, they both pretty much nailed it. Safety.
Okay.
I'm in transit. I mentioned earlier. I'm speaking with a friend that also is in travel, and we're also discussing the issues. We're discussing about safety in travel and reading the notifications and trying to stay abreast of what's going on, and how sometimes it's so very, very difficult because you just don't see how immigration issues translate into what that translates into for the experience itself, or like, if that makes okay. But you go somewhere and they're for example, coming to the States, immigration, there are travel advisors in other countries that advise their people against coming to the States, or say use caution because there's unrest or there's any other. The statement is supposed to be concerning and alarming, and you pay more attention to your surroundings. But unless you've been to the United States, you know exactly what's going on and where it's going on, because it's very big also. It's hard to find those pockets, and you can, for example, visit Suffolk, Virginia, and it's very, very safe, and then you go out to, like, somewhere in California, because I'm not speaking right now, but I understand that there's a lot of unrest. And then find out that it's a very different experience. And for people that just don't travel and don't know, then what was safe in one area is not safe in another, and you haven't really left the country. Mind you, but these issues happen in the Netherlands, they happen in Jamaica. Like, there are pockets, there are safe pockets, and then there are pockets where you have to be specifically look out for certain things in addition to the normal things to look out for. And those things are hard to find in general in the news. So it's really, really helpful when suppliers or other peers or whatever have specific information that you can say, okay, this is what I need to warn my clients about, but I need to not use this specific verbiage because you can still go, but just be aware of this. Does that make sense? I'm trying to be clear and be.
Yes, it makes perfect sense. Thank you, Rosie. This is our last question before we toss it to see what our audience wants to ask you all. And I also want to acknowledge that none of you are solely defined by acts of blatant or insidious racism targeted at you. And if you like to share, because you guys are in this industry still, despite what we've talked about, this is something that you love or enjoy or it's a passion. What is one way you have truly experienced joy in the industry, and what is it that keeps you going?
Yeah, I'll kick it off. I mean, I think what keeps me going are my clients. I mean, I think, the conversation, I enjoy my clients that I work with, love working with them. We have some great clients. I think for me, putting together that great, having that conversation, listening to their wants and needs, that are trying to trip you they want, and you, as a travel advisor, you put that together for them, they come back and have the best experience. For me, that's it, right? That keeps you going. Somebody comes back, they tell you about what they did, how you planned this perfectly for them, and maybe they could have done it without you. Whatever their feedback might be that's positive. For us at our agency, I mean, that keeps us going, right? There's times like now where, obviously the industry is kind of building back up after, what's going on with COVID, but, still just even having conversations right now with clients about what they're looking to do in the future and potential, travel desires and needs. But that, clients keep me going. So that's it for me.
Thanks, Dewan.
I would say
Tammy?
that, it's a combination of, as Dewan said, my clients. I love sending my clients to new places, having them explore it. And, it's just, for me, it's also a love of travel. Again, when I was younger, I didn't really travel often, but I was a huge reader. I loved reading. I loved learning about different cultures and different destinations. So being able to go there myself and also send my clients there, I would say that if I had to probably do it again, I would probably have started much earlier, because this is what I truly love to do.
Thanks, Tammy. How about you, Rosie?
For me, it brought me to travel was having an amazing experience, transformative, therapeutic, and that's what keeps me in it. It's literally sharing that kind of therapy with other people, which is why it's so important to get it right. And so it's the love of travel, of people, and the love of feeling, the love of putting it all together, making exactly.
Yeah. Thank you all for sharing. To our listening audience, please submit your questions. They are coming through on my phone. But I do want to highlight some of the comments that are coming through. Willie is sending us comments. Our Willie was supposed to be on our panel, but he's laid up at home. So I want to amplify his voice during this time. And this is what Willie has to say. Instances of racism needs to be included in honest reviews of suppliers and vendors. We review everything else, but not instances of overt or covert racism. So thank you, Willie, for typing and sharing that with us.
Thanks.
Let's see. Let me read some of the comments here. It doesn't look like we have so far yet any questions, but I just kind of want to read some of the comments to affirm your experiences that some of the other travel advisors have shared with you. One travel advisor, Stacy, says, so true. Sometimes I have to pick my battles when it comes to microaggressions. So that related to her. This comment is from Lily, and it says, I found that in groups when I've asked questions, not pertaining to like this call, but when she's traveling, she says, I found that in groups when I've asked questions, my questions go unanswered, and it's not something that's complicated. But when someone else that isn't a person of color asks a question, folks will reply to their comments while my question gets ignored. I've had this happen on more than one Asian. It looks like we have Willie coming in saying, for me, the joy of travel, going beyond my immediate borders, and then realizing that I can help others do the same. So this is what keeps Willie going. Another comment here says, I also feel very uncomfortable at events. I'm often the only woman of color there, or like one or four that may be in the room. I get stared at like I'm some kind of exotic fruit that walked into the room. Yet no one wants to talk to me or won't make moves to talk to me unless someone else introduces us. It is very unnerving and makes me not want to go to events because of this. We hear you, Lily. Did any of you guys experience some of the things that Willie or Stacey or Lily has talked about?
You know, I've never thought of it that way because I always say that I'm an introvert, so I don't usually like going up to people and talking to them.
Yeah.
Oh, I always kind of felt that, okay, maybe they don't want to just come up and talk to me too because they're introverts also. So I never thought of it that, oh my gosh, maybe it's just that they don't know how to, they don't, you know, they don't know how to kind of react to me as a woman of color coming into a space where, yeah, and she's right. Like sometimes you're either the only one or one of maybe two or three. And then you kind of cluster together sometimes because it's uncomfortable when everyone around you is talking, but no one is actually talking to you. And you're just like,
Here's another comment that says, I've seen a lot of microaggressions from seasoned travel advisors towards new agents. Do you guys find that true within your field?
Yes. That's very true. And unfortunately, and it might be one of those situations because a lot of newer agents, they tend to be people of color, women. It's an explosion in the travel industry of women of color traveling, and also women of color being travel advisors. That might be a kind of a combination of not age discrimination. I don't want to say discrimination, but just kind of like you're muscling in on our territory, and also the otherness that they feel that we are.
Yeah, someone else says new Black travel advisors don't know the correct way to ask a question. We don't know why we've said something wrong, but boy, do the seasoned veteran travel advisors, not all, seem to feel their profession is not being taken seriously. So that was one other comment. Here's a question. Does London have a negative reputation for African Americans? In over 20 years in the business, I've only guided 3 or 4 families, African American families. Yes, for me, as a Londoner born and bred, it is the most diverse city in the world, more than New York City. Does anyone want to answer that?
I mean, that's hard to say because I've been to London. I enjoyed it. I feel that it kind of depends on where you are. I feel like if you're kind of higher or much lower, that you will feel the tension. But if you're kind of just like in the middle, just kind of doing your tourist thing, you should be fine. I think that once you kind of either get a little bit into the more luxury product, or if you really want to, you're doing the hostel type of travel, that's where you might see some tension. Again, I live in New York City. So again, I feel that it's kind of like if you're in the middle, you don't really sense it as much until you start either going lower or higher.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for answering that. We're gonna ask just one more question because our time is winding down, and then I'll kick it back to Steph. But this is a really good question, and I'm glad Kathleen asked this. She says, "Are there specific things white advisors can be doing to support our Black peers, especially with regards to suppliers, host agencies, etc.?"
doesn't even...
Anyone can answer this one.
Yeah, so I would say that if you see us, talk to us. We want to talk to you. We want to, especially if you're new or in the agency, you're kind of just wanting to absorb as much as possible. Also, listen to us not with the intention of answering, but just for the absorption, because we are coming from probably a different space, and we want to be heard, and we want to be recognized as having valid opinions on the way how the travel industry should be. So I feel that's probably, and I mean, I know that kind of is towards maybe someone who's a C-suite level, but it starts at the ground where we want to be heard, we want to, be recognized, and we want to be acknowledged as being equal members in the travel industry.
Well, if our time is up, we have about 3 minutes left, so I'm going to toss it to Steph so she can end it out. Thank you so much, Dewan, Tammy, and Rosie, for sharing your experiences with our audience. And thanks, Steph, for allowing me to moderate today.
Oh,
Thank
my
you,
pleasure.
Regina, thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, this was fantastic. I think the one thing, answering Kathleen's question too, like what might be helpful too, is the other webinars in the series. So the second one is kind of talking, is again about learning. It's listen, learn, and actor, the 3 webinars. But the second one, learn, is about demystifying the Black traveler. So we're talking about how can travel professionals create a diverse and inclusive culture where Black travelers can enjoy the same access and ease of travel as their white and non-Black people of color peers. So that's that one. But for Kathleen, one you'll be interested in, I think, and hopefully everyone that's on this call would like to be interested in, is the last one, which is ACT. And that's steps that you can do as an agency owner or as an industry professional to promote anti-racism in your travel business, whether it be a supplier and making sure that your marketing is reflects the diversity of the United States, or it could be when you're traveling to a conference to make sure, I mean, I know I got emails in from people talking about very similar situations to the comments that came in this webinar, where they were a person of color and they were at a table and they asked a travel advisor that was experienced next to them tips for how to kind of do bookings, and the person just kind of ignored them and blew them off. And she thought maybe she just didn't want to talk to her. But then a white new travel advisor sat on the other side and they started asking the same questions, and the person totally hit it off with them and told them all sorts of tips. They exchanged emails and phone numbers, and it was just heartbreaking to hear that. So hopefully all of you, again, if you go to hostagencyreviews.com/newsletter and sign up for the newsletter, we'll be putting out in our next newsletter the dates for the upcoming webinars. And then one last thing I wanted to mention, a project we're working on, since I know there's a lot of Black and African-American advisors listening to this. HAR is working on a scholarship fund. It probably won't be up for another couple months, but just to let you know, if you're new to the industry, we are working on a scholarship fund to make it easier and less of a barrier by providing support with host agencies and some monetary amounts to help get your agency off the ground. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And again, sign up for the newsletter, and we'll have more information on that when we wrap that up. So thank you again, Regina. It was wonderful having you as our moderator. And of course, our panelists, thank you for taking the time. It was great to see all of you and hear your stories. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Have a great Monday. We'll talk to you later.
All right, bye, guys.
Bye.